I knew that we had a problem. I did not know where to start. I was having issues myself, and I went to the VA and was exploring. I was dealing with insomnia, and I was exploring what options I would have, and wanted to take more of a holistic approach. And at that point, there just was not a lot that was being offered in the way outside of prescription pharmaceuticals. And after watching the slippery slope that has been for our state and my family specifically, it's something I was not willing to explore. So at that point, I jumped in. I started advocating our legislature. I'd had some previous experience with cannabis before, and really started to look at the national landscape whenever it came to utilizing this effectively as an alternative to prescription drugs. And I think I was having a conversation with Ms. Huntley earlier, and we were talking about the fact in states that have access to medical cannabis, they were seeing a drastic reduction in opiate-related overdose deaths. This troubled me. In West Virginia, we've led the nation in prescription drug overdoses for the better part of a decade, never falling out of the top three. And I can get into statistically, where we fell as a state with this, and we were never getting any better. And so I was begging our legislature, at least look into this, at least look at it as a safe, natural alternative. I did that for roughly about 5 years, and I honestly got tired of beating my head against the wall with this, and decided that I was going to move myself and my family to Colorado to explore the cannabis industry, with the intentions of bringing it back home and providing a safe, natural alternative. I went out there for roughly about 3 years. We got in on the ground level. We looked and explored everything from extraction to growing to the retail side of things, and just really immersed ourselves into an industry that was thriving. And wanted to just get a good understanding of the impact that this could make, not only on our opiate epidemic, but economically. So that's what we did. And after about 3 years of being out there, we felt like coming back home and starting with industrial hemp was going to be the avenue for us to take. And so that's what we did. We jumped in. We've got our industrial hemp permit that would allow us to start to and grow industrial hemp in the state of West Virginia. And from there, we were the very first company to open up a strictly cannabis company, if you will. Our focus at that point was on CBD, or cannabidiol. And so I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place with this, but this plant is absolutely chock full of medicinal value. And so what we felt like is, if we started to explore the CBD side of things, and we almost compartmentalize the THC component, because and most people that you run into, have conversations with that are in opposition to this plant, if you can take and compartmentalize that argument, THC, then you can set that to the side. I think it really opens up the educational platform, or at least it has for us, to allow us to start to have that conversation about how this plant interacts with our body through the endocannabinoid system. And so I think it was new conversation at that point, but there was a lot of people that were intrigued, and a lot of people that we've seen come through our retail locations, have just talked about the nightmare situation that they've dealt with whenever it comes to pharmaceutical drugs. And so, not only are we dealing with what I feel like has been a byproduct of that, the opiate epidemic, but we're also dealing with many different things in the state, not necessarily always, earmarked towards addiction, but we have a lot of a community that's elderly, so chronic pain issues, things of that nature. We were seeing people that were getting their prescriptions taken away for utilizing this plant, and we'll say CBD. And so at that point, it felt like here's a great opportunity to really get in, to start to work with our higher education folks and work with the medical community to really bridge the gap on education whenever it comes to this. I'll say that I recently also made it through, and I was a candidate in the latest election. I ran for the West Virginia House of Delegates in the 14th district. Again, I felt like, not only was it not enough to be out there growing and extracting CBD, but legislatively, we've got a lot of work to do whenever it comes to getting in line with the rest of the nation on this plant. And so I felt like, again, this would be a great platform to allow me to kind of jump in there on the political side of things and help move our state forward whenever it comes to the laws that govern this industry. And so, again, I think where this all comes together is that we've got a great opportunity. I've said this many times that our state has a coal miner and it has a farmer on there. Right now, we are underutilizing our agriculture opportunities in West Virginia. If we take the industrial hemp and medical cannabis and we completely set that to the side, West Virginia faces roughly a $7 billion annual food import deficit. That means we are bringing in $7 billion worth of produce and food into West Virginia. When we have, when we are situated as a state to be in some of the best growing climate in the nation. And so that was another campaign pillar of mine, is that we need to take advantage of our agricultural opportunity. But getting back to the hemp side of things, I think that this plant allows us to start the healing process. Again, alluding back to that statistic that was mentioned earlier, in states that have access to medical cannabis, those states are seeing a drastic reduction and opiate-related overdose deaths. So I think if we start to fix the foundation and we start to lean towards more of long-term rehabilitation services as opposed to incarceration, and we really start to, in my opinion, be more proactive as opposed to reactive in addressing the opiate epidemic, I think we fix the foundation. We're able to address our agricultural missed opportunities, if you will, and this allows us to again explore a new industry while helping folks get away from the clutches of addiction, and also allows us, Miss Huntley and I were also talking about the economic impact that it made whenever that I've seen it make in Colorado, when we're talking about the education system, when we're talking about infrastructure. All of the tax revenue that was being utilized from this industry was being dumped into those things that we're falling short on right here in West Virginia. Our in Mason County, more specifically, our primary and our secondary roadways are absolutely shot, and they're dangerous. And so this allows us to then start to explore, hey, we can start to have some of this tax revenue go down and address some of these things on a local level. And so I think, if we're talking about agriculture altogether under an umbrella, it's absolutely important that we get back to, and I said this in my campaign, that we get back to our Appalachian roots. We start to grow. We start to be more self-sustaining. We start to provide some of these things that we need here locally, and not depend on external food sources to provide those types of things, or other agricultural opportunities from other states. I think that we need to be more self-sustaining. And then in turn, I think that's going to ignite some of the interest from some of our youth. And I think that we'll have the opportunity to keep some of those folks there and address, if you will, a multifaceted solution to many different problems that we face, not only agriculturally, but economically, socially, with the opiate epidemic. I think that this allows us to then turn the corner on that mentality, if you will, and allows and gives us a sense of accomplishment, gives us pride back into what we're doing, and allows us to be more self-sustaining in our communities. I know I kind of jumped around there a little bit, but all, in my opinion, this whole message that I've been trying to promote, all is interconnected with one another. And I think if we start to embrace it and we allow it to start to unfold, I think it will allow us to help fix a lot of the issues that we're facing in West Virginia.
Chris Yeager, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Crystal Cook-Marshall.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so I know I sent some slides, so I don't know if those are going to come up, but all right. Oh, there it is. All right, great. Again, we're thrilled to be here. I'm going to look at the echo, so I'm going to put that down. And want to say hello to everybody and friends. I'm going to do the opposite of what Chris just did. So we've been at a very big project for 5 years, and there's a lot to pick through, and so I have my stuff scripted in order to stay on track. And I'm going to skip the history of EDGE, other than to say that about 5 years ago, 3 or 4 of us from southern West Virginia and southern West Virginia, I'm going to turn that down, found ourselves going in very similar directions, both on the ground in practice and also from looking at an economic sector issue. I know the good doctor there had mentioned a couple of the things that have developed expertise in, but one of the things I really have developed expertise in is policy. So I'm from Mercer County in McDowell originally, though I also spent some of my time at Putnam, so I'm familiar with the farming issues up there in Mason. And about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to think, if we could do something to address some of the economic issues in southern West Virginia, what might they be? And in order to do that, I came back to the region and entered a PhD program. And fast forward several years, I found myself looking to economic sectors that were adjacent to the energy sector. And the one that has remained adjacent to the energy sector in our region has been agriculture. And so in 2016, I met some folks actually giving agriculture a shot in the heart of the southern West Virginia coalfields there at McDowell, and we've been working together ever since. Fast forward to later that year when we were invited by some folks at Appalachian Sustainable Development to attend the CAN conference out in Kentucky, and there was a great map made at that time of all of the different anchor institutions working on food issues around the region, and it was obvious to those of us attending that there was nothing located directly where we were. And I'd also done a lot of institutional research around the importance of an actual bricks and mortar space in terms of pushing an economic sector forward. In fact, that's what I did my doctoral work on, was I looked at the actual creation of the energy sector in our region, and we thought, well, how could we go about mapping what's really possible in agriculture as a sector? And so we're not only looking through EDGE at helping individuals become entrepreneurs or helping people through workforce training, but our bigger vision includes, what do we do to really push this economic sector forward? So what we have developed also in the last 5 years is an overview of some touchstones in agriculture that we see meet the criteria of Dr. David Cole's benchmark for being a successful agricultural family in our region, and that's $80,000 a year gross. And so if people actually know anything about the coal industry, that is comparable to a good coal job, right? And although it's gross, that's not what people actually maybe are taking home. We saw our approach as a little different from what was going on 4 or 5 years ago around pushing folks in agriculture towards a sort of a farmer's market model. We were searching, what can we help support that really gets a family or gets folks to something that sustains them long term? And we came up with several different things. One of my co-partners, Jason Tart, actually piloted high tunnel production on the western side of McDowell County. He has 4 commercial high tunnels. It's taken all of us a while to sort of sort out what really has to happen. But in addition to looking at markets and developing potential markets, we also develop pilots. So Jason has piloted vegetable and fruit and orchard production all the way through, and I've piloted meat goat production and pastured poultry production. Our other co-partner, Amelia Bandy, has piloted honey production, and we have done that from field all the way through to market and assessed those as agricultural touchstones that could really be developed into full-fledged sectors in our region. We put together a plan for agricultural infrastructure through a site that Jason owns through a cooperative that he formed called McDowell County Farms, and that site's in Kimball, West Virginia, so along 52. We wrote a successful grant 2 years ago now to develop that into an infrastructure site for agricultural production in our region. So one of the big problems we have with anybody actually making a living in agriculture in our region is that we don't have the infrastructure for it. So people can kind of dream all they want to about, replacing the incoming agriculture coming from California or Iowa to West Virginia, or things coming in from the outside. But it is very difficult for an individual farmer to find the capital to develop the kind of machinery and equipment and infrastructure to support success. And so our analysis was then that must be aggregated. So we put up, equipment lists around high tunnel, value added in fruit orchard production. We've put up equipment lists around successful meat goat production. I also failed to mention maple. We had maple assessment done, both from an economic perspective, and we also looked to some research at Virginia Tech done on the maple stock in McDowell County. And what we found was that we're also sitting in a region that's ripe for maple production, but one of the issues becomes how do you achieve that if you don't have the infrastructure then to do it. And so at this site in Kimball, we proposed first putting in a store, and we received some funding for that in 2018. We've been waiting still for that money to be released into us, but we wanted that then to serve as this institutional anchor for further agricultural sector development here in the region. I'm going to skip forward then a little bit. We also took that site and began to think, okay, well, what else could we do then to help support people who are interested in helping to develop these agricultural sectors? So Jason had piloted not only the fruit and vegetable production, but also potentially working with schools and helping to create a farm-to-school pipeline locally. But the issue with that, again, was that individual farmers can't show up to a school and just drop off their things. You have to have a site to bring that to, and it has to be put into a particular form. So we looked at creating an agricultural aggregation center next to the store. And then last but not least, until COVID hit, we were sold on the concept of creating a hospitality section to this where there could be a farm to hospitality pipeline. If people are familiar with McDowell and adjacent southwestern Virginia, there's the ATV trail, and the average ATV trail tourist has an over $100,000 a year income. That's quite different from the local residents, and so we were looking at trying to create some kind of hospitality pipeline among those two, where local residents then are able to create entrepreneurship opportunities around farming and maybe a food truck court to then also serve the ATV tourist market. But with COVID now also sort of doubly hitting the one industry that has begun to thrive there, we're not sure how that's going to play going forward. So I'm going to circle back. So several things. Again, first, we want to support people towards an $80,000 a year income. We want to help support agricultural infrastructure towards allowing those farmers to be able to be successful and not have to find the kind of capital that's really impossible to find in our region for people to do almost anything, much less agriculture. Third, we want to aggregate to a particular site the pipelines from these farmers for distribution out not only to tourists but to local folks and to schools. Last but not least, one of the other key pieces we identified for the development of the sector in our region is land access. So if folks are familiar, again, with the Coalfields, One of the problems that we have down that way is that a lot of the land is tied up in large holding companies. And so one of the things we've been working on for the last 4 years is gaining access to that land. And we finally pushed ourselves forward to where Jason, through his farm, is going to be given stewardship of a pilot of 200 acres of land that's also on the western side of McDowell County for production of some of these things that I spoke about. So we haven't been clear exactly yet for what we're going to get. They're doing some logging there, and there's one profile of things we'll do if it turns out to be that kind of land. There's another profile of things we'll do if it's just land with standing trees on it. But we may be developing that particular resource company as a partner in helping to develop these enterprises. They're particularly interested in the maple production. So that's a short story of what has been a slog of 3 principal volunteers. We've been doing all of this volunteer together for the last 5 years. We have been sorting out the pilots on our own the last 5 years. And we've been looking the last couple of years to really institutionalize what we're up to. So we were very excited about a partnership we had with Coalfield Development Authority earlier this year, where Jason, at his farm site in western McDowell, was able to have 9 trainees in agricultural production at his farm, in high tunnel production, fruit orchard production, and so on and so forth. And our hope had been that they would want to go on to be farmers. Now, farming's not for everybody, and there were hit or misses in our first round of trainees. But we were excited that people made it through, that they went through the also workforce development aspects of that. And we're starting another cohort in March. I'm not the one that facilitates the relationship with Coalfield, but that's our anticipation, and that will also be at Jason's site there. What we had wanted to have happen, we had planned 11 community meetings to get people interested in meat goat production, pasture poultry production, and so on towards this particular site in Kimball, but then COVID hit. And so we're now in discussion with some county commissioners towards maybe reigniting that in the spring outdoors and seeing if we can find more folks who are interested in solidly becoming producers in these arenas. And so I'll stop there, but along the way we formed a nonprofit. We were told that we needed to do this. I have a background in nonprofit executive directorship, so I was very against our starting a nonprofit, but we ended up doing that, and it took us a long time to develop this mission and vision that you're seeing here. I'm going to flip through the slides real quick and just tell folks what they're looking at. So I'm not sure who's in control, but could you go to the next slide? All right, so these are our 3 major programmatic focuses, which I just covered. Our training is covered under Thrive. One of the big things that we saw that was a problem in our region were issues of regional coordination. There's just not enough coordination across the border there between southern West Virginia and southwest Virginia. There used to be under coal, but now that these areas are kind of splitting up into different economic pods, that's not really happening, so we're also attempting to do that. So the next slide. There's our Mountain Farm Store site. And we were very lucky that we actually wrote a successful grant to the Appalachian Regional Commission for this, and we were granted $800,000 back in the spring, which they rescinded in July because their priorities shifted, so that was a real disappointment to us. So we're looking to break this down into different segments, and I'll show you a little budget on this later on. So that's the site in Kimball out of this property we already have access to. The next slide. So again, these are the things that we've done pilots in, and we have very solid field-to-market models for. Next slide. So these are the trainings that we've also developed, and we anticipate that our March group of trainees will be more interested in mountain farming maybe than some of our most recent trainees were. The next slide. There's some of our folks from this summer. And I want to pause and say something here, is that being from Mercer County originally and McDowell, and so this is, so bear with me, Appalachian folks, because, we got to be upfront and be honest here. One of the things I did in 2016 as part of my doctoral work is I went on this conference circuit as a research participant observer. And I wanted to see how these different conferences like this one affected who actually got funding. And so if people want to talk to me about that offline, I'm glad to tell you, because I traced who was at the conferences, and then I followed the power funding and who got the money later on. And I was told two things back in 2016. So a political official down in Mercer County told me that there won't be any power money going to McDowell because of our issues of transparency. So one of the things we've worked hard on has been on issues of transparency. And one of the things that struck me about the conferences is that it did not look like what I know Mercer County and McDowell County to look like. So one of the things we focus in particular on are the African-American communities in McDowell. We'd attempted to do some of this institutional building in Bluefield that ran into some political pushback. And so thus we decided to move our site into Kimball. And, one of the aspects, of our mission is to make sure that the African-American community in particular in Tazewell and McDowell and Mercer counties aren't ignored. So I just wanted to make that note and have people note how people look in the photos, because it's not what you always get when you're showing folks in and out of West Virginia. So the next slide. So again, regional coordination we know is something that really needs to happen. I know there's been a great push forward through the ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission in power since 2016 to do this, but we see an even greater need. Next slide. And we actually have some decent feedback from the current president and their administration, and we've got invited to participate in something called a Prosperity Council, and we're still trying to maybe take this Prosperity Council and make use of it going forward through some of that regional coordination where different grass tops folks come together to help push this economic sector forward. So the next slide. And so these are our current needs, and so we again have been doing this volunteer and also funding ourselves the pilots for the last 5 years. The training that we offered this past summer, we were very grateful to Coalfield for paying the trainees, but it didn't pay our trainer. And we really see this institution building, this anchor institution, as a real means forward to push these economic possibilities forward. Until the late 1980s, the union served as an organizing principle and institution in our region, and that's now gone. And there's nothing really that's risen or come forward to serve as that kind of economic organizer. And we're hoping that our mountain farm complex in particular does this. We might have an opportunity to also be or partner with the current county commissioners. They just acquired the armory there in McDowell for part of what we're up to. But in any case, at the Kimball site, we want to finally move forward with the store, make that also a training center, and then explore the opportunity either for that building or someplace else, for a building adjacent to it or someplace else for the aggregation center, and then rethink whether we're still interested in doing the hospitality aspect if the ATV trail and the tourists bounce back after what we've all been through this year. So that's a brief overview of what our current needs are. And then last but not least, one little slide. That's who we are. We are in the business of making friends. And so we really want to work with others. We play well with others. We would love to talk to other people who are also on this panel about ways we can work together. And we feel very strongly that we've developed some solid models that could be applied to many communities across Appalachia. I mean, I know that often these kinds of economic interventions are done through a nonprofit that gets a grant and then does a pilot. Well, we're farmers and business people that have done the pilots and brought it to a nonprofit rather than vice versa. And so part of what we're on the search for is partners in capital, but we have the market models already developed. So I'll stop there, and I'm excited to learn more and also hear from people who are also on this call.
Thank you all so much, and thank you so much for sharing with us your stories about what you're doing and why you do it. And I think that really helps people get a better understanding of what a social enterprise is, and that they don't all look the same, and that there are various models and that they all seem to be working quite well for us here in West Virginia. As I said before, I've got a couple questions that I'm going to pose to our panelists, but please, if any of the other participants have questions, please put those in the chat and we will get to them. We've got plenty of time to talk, so thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and go in the same order we went before. I'm going to start with Ursulette, who is from Logan County. I didn't mention that. Then go to Chris Yeager, and then go down to Dr. Marshall. So my first question for our panelists is, how can our state and local government support you in your work? You know, this conference is put on by the Alliance for the Economic Development in Southern West Virginia. So we've got political folks on here, and we've got higher ed folks on here. So what can they do to support you in your work? Ursulette, you're muted.
I forget. Push the mute button back on. One of the biggest resources that I have found, I've been a part of, Carol Miller has put together a task force that has brought some people in the local community together just to bounce ideas off of people and to see what the needs are of the community. And I really think that if we had more opportunities to have our voices heard, so if everybody could put together, you know, boots on the ground per se in government, and really put their ear to the ground and start listening to what organizations need, and start providing opportunities for financial resources to where those individuals can gain the money needed to operate the businesses. I look at some of the work that we've done at Unlimited Future, and it's phenomenal. We've had 2 really large businesses that we have been able to assist right in the Fairfield community where our incubator is housed, that would have been lost had it not been for the existence of Unlimited Future, and for people being able to take advantage of our coaching program. One of them is Savannah's. It's been around for a very long time, and due to some issues that they were having, nothing financially, I think it was more medical. They were getting up in age and their children just didn't want to take over the business. So there was an employee there that was willing to do so. And we were able at Unlimited Future to be able to help them and keep a well-known pillar in the community with being able to provide them with education and training. And another example of that is right in Fairfield, G.D. Ritzy's. It's been in the community for over 50 years. It has a social focus. It often employed individuals that were incarcerated that absolutely could not get employment anywhere else other than G.D. Ritzy's. And they, about a year ago, due to getting older and not wanting to be able to retire, the owner wanted to sell the business. And because of the training and education that the new owner received from Unlimited Future, we were able to help him save another business within our community. And I take great pride in that, because without resources, we can't provide help and assistance to people right in our own neighborhood. So if there's some kind of way that our people in government could form like a task force that could come out and talk to organizations that are getting their hands dirty and actually doing the work and supplying some financial resources and connections. We need connections as well as monetary resources within the community and within the state. I think that would be phenomenal. And again, I commend Carol Miller for her efforts in that task force.
Thank you so much, Ursulette. Yeager, same question to you. How can state and local government support you in your work? And you're muted.
I think the biggest thing as far as the arena that I'm specifically in is just a couple things. First off, education. there's a lot of folks that the cannabis plant, the cannabis industry has come with a stereotype. And so as opposed to just continuing to feed into that stereotype, I would encourage folks to get out there and research. This is something, as an advocate, that when reaching out to the legislature, we've begged our legislature, look at the statistics. Don't take my word for it. Look at the statistics on how this plant has helped in other states, how they're seeing an impact on it. And then I think looking and gauging that subjectively, not saying, well, and I've heard it from plenty of politicians, we've got a drug problem and we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. We need to look at this subjectively. Period. If, like I said before, if you take the psychoactive component of this plant and you completely set it aside, we can talk science on how this plant interacts with our body, and how we can provide a natural, safe alternative. So I think that communication. I'm a communications major, and I think that what we have to do is we have to start with education. And we've got to look at things subjectively, but we need to have our policymakers and our lawmakers not just turn a blind eye to this. We keep begging and looking for, some ship to come in and save us, I feel like. And we continue to ignore what impact that this plant could potentially mean for our state. We've traditionally been known as an extraction state. So, folks will come in, they'll extract coal, they'll take it back out, and here in the trenches, so to speak, we lose. And so I think that we need to start filling that gap with communication, with education, and we need to, if we're talking about, this industry specifically, we need to look at how can we benefit from this. Again, West Virginia is situated in some of the best, geographically, in some of the best growing climate in the country. And so, if we're not looking at those agricultural opportunities, or we've got communication gaps, as Ms. Marshall had mentioned about, we're able to grow it and produce it, but now we're having problems with the high-priced extraction equipment, and then being able to fill that gap and then taking it to the market, and then taking it one step further and it, getting it out to the rest of the country. I wholeheartedly believe that this is an industry that we can embrace here in West Virginia. It is, not everybody is going to be cut out to be a farmer. It is extremely hard work. I will give you guys that. But the reward, the benefit that it means to our community and to our overall health, we're not, I'm not even going to jump on that rabbit hole. But what this could mean to our health, not only through medicine, but through good food and the intake of good food. I think we're on to something here, but I think that we have to continue to push education, and we have to demand communication, because I feel like that's where it gets dropped off. There's some great things that have been said here today in this forum, and I hope that we can continue to work together, whether that's politically through our legislature or individually together, to push this agricultural opportunity for West Virginia. Again, I don't want to seem like it all comes down to medical cannabis or industrial hemp, but I do know the impact that it can make on so many different levels. And I feel like, if we start to address that agricultural opportunity, there's been folks that have direct messaged me since we've been on here and said, we have this program and that program that can facilitate what it is that you're talking about. I don't think that we can ignore, again, the simple fact that we have a farmer on our flag. We have some of the best growing conditions in the country. We are very intelligent people. And I think if we work together, we start to bridge those gaps, and we continue that communication and that education all the way up to our lawmakers. I feel like that's when we're going to start to gain some traction on it. We will see those folks come out that want to have their hands in the dirt. I'll say this, statistically speaking, they're finding that with veterans with PTSD that are dealing with certain things coming back home, that they're finding that there's medicinal or value in being out there and planting things and being involved in the garden process, if you will. Something else I'd mention, well, not mentioned in this call, but had mentioned on that campaign trail, is that, there were talks about some of our prison systems getting involved, and maybe they start to grow some of the produce. Maybe it's potato production, whatever the case may be. And I know that I'm kind of bouncing around all over the place a little bit, but I feel like these things tie in with one another. And if we have the willingness of folks that are willing to get out there and farm some of the things that we need, again, not only would we be self-sustaining, but I think that it's also filling that gap that we need to produce with agriculture. I don't know. In my opinion, like I said, I feel like it's allowing us to bridge that gap on so many different levels. But again, I think it comes down to communicating these thoughts, working with active folks in the community, and taking that vision and marching it forward together. I think that's where that we fell in the process, to be honest with you. We have so many great ideas, so many great concepts, and they just fall short. And I think that, again, we've seen, with COVID coming in, we've seen the food supply chain being tested. And to me, it is honestly a no-brainer. I think we have to start to employ our farmers. And I think that's where we're going to get results at, to be honest with you. I think that some of these things will start to address, and it's a bifold or trifold solution, if you will. And so I'm excited about working with higher education and folks like you guys to bridge that gap. I think it's gaps in our communication, and once we understand what we need to do, work together, communicate the thought, and then continue that education moving forward. I think that these are all things that are obtainable, all things that we can do, and all things that will ultimately, hopefully, lend solutions to multiple problems that we face here in the state.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely.
Crystal, same question to you. How can our state and local governments support you in your work? We can't hear you, Crystal. You might have to do the *6, was it? Still can't hear you. Yeah, it says it's still muted. Was it *6, Brittany?
I am unmuted. Okay, how about that?
Yeah, we got you now. Thank you.
Right, there you are. All right. No, I don't want to blah, blah, blah. Zoom's asking me questions. Over the last 5 or 6 years of working together, we've tried to boil what we're up to down to a couple of organizing principles, and I'm going to bring this back to sort of local, state, and federal government here in a second. So one of them I mentioned before was the $80,000 farm family goal. The other one, this was a question that sort of encapsulates what we try to bring to county commissioners or other political folks, is if you envision our region, what would have been developed here had the energy sector not dominated? Now, I actually have answers to that because I examined how the energy sector got started, but that kind of wets your whistle to begin to think, okay, what else? We're not resourceless here. And so what are the resources that we're sitting on that we could grow into full-fledged economic sectors? We have had good luck recently. It's taken us a long time. We've been on the friend-making trail for several years, and we've definitely hit our heads up against some local political folks who are uninterested. We've had very good luck recently with the current set of county commissioners in working relationship going with I'm going forward with them, and I'll be honest about what that took was, an electoral change. And so we tried with before, and they were just not interested. So, hitting up whoever local that you can hit up that will get on board with it is important, and who gets it, right? Who gets the concepts that we're bringing to them, and willing to try something different. So that's been good for us. Now, here's where I'm going to maybe say something that's a little new and maybe deflate some folks' bubble. In the 1880s, it took $100 million of 1880 money to start the Pocahontas Coalfield in southern West Virginia and southwest Virginia. It was the result of 30 years of lobbying by political entities and private business folks in Virginia and West Virginia. It took a shift in the Virginia legislature away from the plantation economy post-slavery. It took federal interest, and it took British money to make that happen. So if you really want to see an economic sector shift, you need significant state investment and federal investment. Now, we were all very happy, and I would have taken the $800,000 and been so glad for it coming from the Appalachian Regional Commission, but I want you to understand that one tractor supply costs more than $1 million to open. And you need at least one tractor supply or a Southern States or a Rural King or something near you if we're going to support all these farmers, right? You can't do it without any kind of infrastructure. I mean, I know of really great, successful farmers meeting that small business administration $300,000 a year. That's what's considered a small farm. Not $16,000 from the farmer's market, not $4,000 from somebody's tomatoes, $300,000 gross. Doing well in Monroe County, West Virginia, where they have to go to Harrisonburg, Virginia to get their supplies, right? So one of the things that we can begin to do, and one of the reasons we formed a for-profit corporation cooperative, right? We've spent the last five years piloting the things that cooperative could then build upon and then produce more producers. We've got people waiting to buy product from us. We just have to scale, right? And one of the things that we can do through this corporate cooperative is lobbying. And I don't mean the kind of lobbying like going to Washington, D.C., but one of the things that we need to do for the folks on this call or some of the people who are actually on this panel is begin to come together as a block and say, this is the amount of money really that it takes to get this kind of economic sector shift. And we were, again, glad for the $20 million trickling down through 15 states from the ARC, but folks, that's not really going to cut it in terms of economic sector shift. It takes a tremendous amount of infrastructure and money to make these economic sectors happen. Again, around cannabis, I'm often asked, and it's not legal to do in North Carolina, but I'm often asked my opinion of cannabis growth, and I say that it's great. Frankly, we have better capacity to really what Colorado does than CBD, and the CBD is legal in North Carolina, but you're competing against the, R.J. Reynolds Corporation. You're competing against the Winston-Salem. You're competing against the, tobacco farmers with thousands upon thousands of acres that they could, at the drop of a hat, turn the infrastructure over into hemp production. And West Virginia is sitting in a mountain region. So what we've been trying to focus on is what can we do that's successful mountain farming that's geographically appropriate. Prior to coal, where we've been doing our principal piloting, was a pasture-based region, right? That's what the settlers had developed there. Well, that's not the only thing you can do, and I've already outlined those other things. But as a group, we can come together to begin to do that kind of lobbying, and it's going to take a lot of us to come together to educate the state, educate the feds, and say, this is how you do it, folks. People can love them or hate them. I'm uninterested. But, one of the things I looked at 10 years ago, my PhD, was energy policy. I used to work for the Virginia Center for Coal and Energy Research. You can throw stones at me also for that. But I understood that in our area, that as new generations of coal operators come on, there might be partners that we can make that understand that they're going to have to do something different. Likewise, I also thought, 10 years ago, when we're making this green energy shift in America, It's only going to be serious if tremendous money is going to be put behind it. And that was by President Obama to the tune, again, of $200–300 million. So let's scale that back to West Virginia. If we're really talking about developing adjacent or regrowing economic sectors, whether it's a full-fledged cannabis industry, full-fledged maple, like the capacity that we know we have, I don't care whether, we've also looked at bottled water, but, we have the great opportunity for honey because we don't have the agricultural spray that they have in the Carolinas and in Kentucky that screw up your bees. That's going to take real cash, right? Now, in the meantime, what we've decided to do as a social enterprise is to continue to keep on trucking, looking for cottage industry level support, right? Even our site there in McDowell is a cottage level industry, but we know there's the capacity for full-fledged production of maple, full-fledged production of honey that are sort of larger sectors, but that's not going to happen without significant commitment from the state and from the feds for capital. And we can take that, if they match it, and go to private companies for that kind of economic sector development. And so I will stop. I'll stop there. So I've thought a lot about this and looked for the models to follow.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And really, I had two other questions I was going to ask, but our panelists are so amazing that they pretty much answered all three questions right then. And I think with our remaining time, Chris, Yura, and I thought that it would be good to go to some of the participants' questions that we got through chat, just because we're running short on time. So we want to make sure that we address what the audience members really want to know about. So Chris, Yura?
Yeah, I think everybody, just hats off to everyone who presented today. I mean, you guys have covered so much ground. And for anybody who's a novice to social enterprise, I think you have all really shown the group here of how wide the scope can be for the various industries. I think one thing that we, defining a social enterprise and seeing how many of those do we have in our state currently, I think it's, everything is a social enterprise in some way. It's just a matter, are you taking into account specifically the community, the environment, and the people you work with as part of that equation. I would just, ask quickly, aside from the planning and the growing, what about the folks that you guys are working with, individuals?
Now, come on now. I know you guys aren't shy.
Are you asking about some of the people that we've trained?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there a specific,
well, we're kind of twofold. We got schooled ourselves earlier this year in that, we kept trying to make entrepreneurs. We're going to find entrepreneurs, grow entrepreneurs. And someone said, oh, but you're the social entrepreneurs. You're the entrepreneurs. And so we're really kind of approaching this in two ways. Where we've done the pilot, we also want to grow those pilots into something to scale, yet at the same time, we want to train other producers into it. And so our first group of 9 trainees, a couple of them will stick with it. We've actually had a good partnership, I failed to mention, with the USDA Natural Resources Services, did I say that right? And their high tunnel program. So they've also helped put in a high tunnel for one of our local folks, and he works together specifically with Jason on some of these pilots there in McDowell. Back to someone who said earlier, farming is difficult. So, we're also trying to find other avenues for work while people also develop their entrepreneurship capacity and skills. And so we've split our nonprofit into kind of 2 missions around people and work, that one of them is towards entrepreneurial training and development in the agripreneurship realm. But the second is also, especially since COVID has hit, on remote and at-large training. So some of them are going on into to be supported through Coalfield, for example, for CDL training. We're also looking at potential medical coding. And so that's very specific to a non-geographic centered location like McDowell County, where we don't have a Charleston or a Huntington to draw people into other kinds of work. But we're hoping that with our next cohort in the spring, and as we get to do public presentations, that we're going to bring on board people who are potentially more interested in producing some of the things we're talking about to scale. And a lot of that also depends on capital. I mean, again, we've built the models. It's now being able to access the capital and the infrastructure to scale.
Great, thank you. Chris Yeager, I was just curious, as far as the folks that work with you, is there a specific individual that you guys are kind of looking to train, or is it just, you know, does it kind of run the gamut in terms of your employee base?
It does. It runs the gamut. Honestly, a lot of folks that have come out that have either been hired by us or that have volunteered are extremely, I think they've got a passion for this. They've got a passion for the plant. And where this really relates to is, so, you know, when, you know, you get great therapeutic benefit by being out there, planting the plant, putting it in the field, tending to it, and ultimately seeing that process into CBD oil. With that being said, though, once that goes into the retail side of things, I've gotten the opportunity to be able to see folks come in that may have dealt with high blood pressure, may have dealt with opiate addiction. So the things that, for me, that really are exciting and keep me passionate about this is just seeing how it's helping people. I've literally seen folks come in, and I don't want to get too crazy and you know, but I've seen folks come in that have been in pain from neuropathy, that have come in on a walker or assisted, and found a product that worked for them and seen it change the quality of their life. I've seen them come out not using that walker. I've seen folks come in and say, you know, my son has went from, you know, several, I won't say 100 of seizures a day, but to a handful. And so when you see that impact that you're making medically or in the quality of someone's life, I think it transcends far past what I do. There's other folks that are seeing that too, and there's a healthy just acceptance, I think, for the people that want to get involved. They feel like they're helping, and they're feeling like what they're doing has a mission and has a cause. So it might be something as simple as taking a seed and put it into a pod, but the evolution of that plant, knowing that those plants represent someone, or allowing someone to get their life back, their liberty back, their health back. It's extremely powerful. And so I think there's a draw when we're talking about people that want to get involved with this. There's a draw that people feel like that they're helping. They feel like that they're making a difference. And so I've taken a lot of people that are non-traditional farmers, and I kind of call it the water boy effect, if you will. But they'll get into this, and they might not be farmers, but that passion comes through. And I feel like that at the end of the day, you know, we work their tails off. But at the end of the day, they feel extremely rewarded by what we're able to do and what we're able to accomplish. So, you know, just to echo the thoughts of Miss Marshall, I think, you know, if we have the infrastructure there, the communication there, legislatively, politically, and we have the backing financially. That's been another thing that's been extremely hard in this industry, has been the legality of it. So a lot of folks, there's not funding. Whatever we're able to create, that is the funding. And so I think once we start to move past that, and we start to push this envelope in this industry, I think that there's a lot of potential that we can tap into there. And I think, you know, there is going to be a lot of people that want to be involved in this, that want to grow, that want to be on the retail side of this, that want to be involved in it. And so if you speak to a lot of folks that are currently involved in this industry, whether it's on the medical cannabis side or the industrial hemp side, the fact of the matter is they're helping people. And I think that that's something that is not being fulfilled in your everyday 9 to 5. Sometimes it doesn't come down to a paycheck and what you're getting paid. Sometimes it comes down to, I'm passionate about what I do, and I can see what we are doing, transcending across those stereotypes, across all lines. And so I don't know. I think that it's not been a problem for us to find people. I think people want to be involved. I think it's going to take direction. And, I'll say this and I'll let someone else speak. There's hemp is being used in over 50,000 different products. So if you take CBD and you take medical cannabis and you set that to the sideline, biochar, taking the stocks and some of the things that that are a byproduct of our industry, burning that down and creating nutrients that we can then reintroduce back into the soil, fiber, fabric. We have a toilet paper shortage. And I know this is funny, but we can literally take this industrial hemp plant and start to create hemp toilet paper, hemp fabrics. There's biofuels. Right now, Exxon is starting to tap into Colorado with biofuels. So they're taking this and creating a fuel that's cleaner than the fuels that we're using now. We're just now starting to tap the potential of this industry. The industrial hemp plant alone, when planted, it's taking out 10 times the amount of carbon monoxide out of the air than what trees are. And after 90 days, it's a renewable resource. We chop it down, we produce it into a product, and then we plant it again. We would not have to timber like we do now, and be able to preserve some of those trees. There's thousands upon thousands of applications that we can use with the industrial hemp plant and the cannabis plant in general. And we're just now starting to scratch the surface on it.
Great. I mean, I think you guys, again, I think both of you presented very strong cases for how you're trying to differentiate our economy, and applaud both of your efforts.
Thank you.
Chris Yura, did you have any additional questions? Were there more questions in the chat?
Yeah, there was a few. I think kind of just as a rough overview, I think there's a specific question regarding to Chris Yeager regarding Carla. She asked, do you see the checked demographic categories of the legislature to be part of the problem with the approval of moving forward in the cannabis industry?
Yes, legislatively, I'll be honest with you, this has been an uphill battle. And I'm not going to get political. I feel like that this is a nonpartisan issue, but it has become political. I don't think that, again, if we're going back to my own personal experience, I've advocated at the legislature for the better part of 10 years for this industry and our access to it. And I'll go into a lawmaker's office, and as soon as I come out, there's pharmaceutical lobbyists that are going in. And so, I think that there's a direct correlation there when we're talking about West Virginia leading the nation in prescription drug overdoses, and the lack of effort that it's taken us to get in a medical cannabis program set up. We passed this 3.5 years ago. The law was passed. But it's taking us almost 3.5 going on 4 years now to implement a medical cannabis program that we passed 3.5, 4 years ago. And me personally, I think there's a direct link there. And so, again, that was another reason why I made a run for office, is that I don't think that this industry has a voice in our legislature. I think that we're watching the national progression of the cannabis industry, and we're falling behind in West Virginia. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 4, maybe 5 states that had ballot initiatives that just passed during this recent election. And again, we won't see this industry continue to move forward in West Virginia. And that's a shame because, again, not only economically and socially, I think that this can help, but, there are so many things I feel like that are tied politically that are preventing it from moving forward. And we've got to break past that stigma. We've had an approach to this for over 10 years that's not worked. And so I think we need to identify that. We need to look at that and say, you know what? All these other states are, when we're talking about the implementation of the programs, we're looking at other states. We're looking at Pennsylvania and Colorado with implementing it. Why are we not looking at statistically how this can affect and help our state? And I think that our policymakers are turning a blind eye to it. And it's unfortunate because in the trenches, the ones that need the help, the ones that want to see the economic growth in West Virginia, the ones that don't want to leave here because this is our home, we're the ones being overlooked. And I think that we have to be a strong voice. We have to present a good case, and we have to do it unified. And so getting back to answering that question, the legislature has been a roadblock. And unfortunately, I don't see it getting it any better.
We're running about out of time, but I like leaving it on that rally call from Chris Yeager, all of us coming together and working together. This is our home. This is where we want to be. We love this state and we want to make it better. And I think that pretty much sums up what this panel was all about, social enterprises. And I want to end that by saying, first of all, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I've learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot, but I learned so much more. And I'm very excited to see some of the partnerships and collaborations that might come out of this session going forward.
Kelli, can I butt in for just a second?
Yeah, please.
Hey, it's me, Ursulette.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to all the other entrepreneurs, and one of the things that we do at Unlimited Futures, through a process called coaching, is we help entrepreneurs with that missing link that they may need in their business. So I'd just like to offer our services at Unlimited Future to the other two entrepreneurs on this call for a call to collaborate with them and see if we can't get our heads together and see how we can possibly network and get something done at the legislative level. One of the things that I've done is
Oh, you froze, Ursulette. You froze up a little bit.
Okay, a couple other leaders in the nonprofit world, we actually went and lobbied and got our state laws changed. So I do have a little bit of experience working on the policy side, and I would love to, with my sales experience, help you guys navigate through the legislative level and get some things done to help move this forward. So my cell phone number and stuff I'll put in the chats. And if you guys want to collaborate and see how we can get a game plan together, I would offer my services from Unlimited Future to do so.
Thank you, Ursulette. And I put everybody's website in the chat, and you can also find that information in the conference dashboard. And I just want to throw out another thing. One of the things that I had worked on last year before COVID changed everything and made a bizarro world, as we were working on developing a poverty solutions and success center here at Marshall University. And one of the things we were working on is developing an interactive database where folks like the folks who are on this call could go and find each other more easily than kind of happening to run across each other at a conference. So fingers crossed that I can get that started again. But anyway, thank you again, everybody, for participating. To the panelists, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. To Chris Yura, thank you so much for helping with this and keeping us going and monitoring the chat. I appreciate it so much. I also want to thank Brandon Dennison, Sarah Payne, and Brittany Bruce who are super dynamos and got this whole thing together, and other people too, not just them, but you know, super dynamos. So I see that Sarah has jumped on the call, and I will turn it back over to her, but I'm just going to say one last time, thank you so much to the panelists. You guys were amazing. I learned a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what this conference is all about. Kelli, you're fantastic. And so thank you for all that you have done. Learned a lot from this panel, the other two panels as well. And we're hoping to host regional conversations, statewide conversations in 2021 to continue this dialogue, to drill down, to look for action items that we could work on. And so this topic is definitely needed. And so thank you so much for your participation. And we will see all of you bright and early at 9 a.m. tomorrow for our health day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.